Since the beginning of the Trump presidency, ICE has detained more than 100,000 people, and its shadow prison system of detention centers has received more than $45 billion in funding. Masked agents break car windows and zip-tie children in the streets. And you've seen the videos. They're all over social media. But there is an enormous piece of this story that's just, well, it's missing. We're aware of the initial horror stories of families being broken up and people tackled in the streets, but have almost no idea what happens after those cell phone cameras switch off and those people are carted away. So in this video, I'm going to try to answer what should be a relatively straightforward question. What happens to people after they've been detained by ICE? In ordinary times, it should be straightforward. They get arrested, head to a detention facility, go through court proceedings, and are either released or deported. But they're not ordinary times. In September, Physicians for Human Rights, one of the few organizations trying to make sense of these detention center systems, found that more than 10,000 detainees were placed in solitary confinement, with 3 out of 4 for upward of 15 days, and some as many as 44 days. And many of these people, they'd never even seen a judge. The report, titled Cruelty Campaign, Solitary Confinement in U.S. Immigration Detention, was interesting. It was revealing, but it was also out of date from the moment that it was dropped. The situation on the ground is changing so fast that no academic group can stay on top of it through FOIA requests and statistical analysis, especially when those statistics are provided by ICE. So today I'm going to talk to Taylor. She's a social worker on the front lines who's been posting on TikTok and other social media about what she has seen while trying to get basic representation for people who've been caught up in the ICE dragnet. She didn't want me to use her full name, but you can find her at all the social media places at the handle Social Worker for the People. Over the last several months, she has been harassed by counter-protesters, been followed home by suspicious vehicles, and her phone has been hacked with sophisticated government spyware. I had to cut some parts out of this video because, in her words,
I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so sorry.
Which should give you at least some idea of what we're going to get into in today's conversation. I urge you to listen to the whole interview because while some of it may sound bureaucratic and even mundane, it's vital for you to understand that even if you are an American citizen, the changes happening over at ICE could very well be coming to anyone who the government suspects of being less than loyal in the very near future. So let's dive in. What's your name and what do you do?
I'm Taylor. I am a social worker in my day job, but a few months ago, posted on TikTok that I felt compelled to drive from Missouri to Alligator Alcatraz. And through that, I made a bunch of connections with family members of detainees. And so sort of organically, I started helping them as I do as a social worker. You know, I'm used to bureaucracies that are difficult. I'm used to things being hard to get a direct answer. But this is like the bureaucracy doesn't even exist. The system doesn't exist. So there's no phone numbers to call. There's no emails to email. There's no one even answering any questions. People are just put into tents and there's no actual system of accountability at all.
So as a social worker, your job is to navigate the bureaucracy and get people services. Is that more or less right?
And oftentimes it's difficult to understand, like especially Social Security, for example, applying for disability is like one of the most complex things. When I started helping people in detention, specifically at Alligator Alcatraz, because my first clients were in Alligator Alcatraz, I started to realize that after spending hours upon hours a day calling everybody I possibly could, that nobody even had the answers. I called every single Florida bureaucracy that I could possibly find. I called every county in Florida trying to get an answer of who was running this place. They admitted, like, I have no idea who's even running this place. Like, I'm apparently supposed to be part of the organization that's running this place, but I don't know who could give you an answer, right? So it was insane to hear from the people who are supposed to know what's happening that they didn't even know what's happening either.
From what you're able to piece together from talking with families, what happens to somebody after they get detained by ICE?
So, what's interesting also is before they're even detained by ICE, often people are being detained by local law enforcement that isn't ICE, and then accused of something, a charge is leveraged towards them, that they're released on bond for from a county jail. Say they're accused of theft, and then they're not convicted of this charge. They're in jail, and then they're released on bond by the judge about this charge, and then we're going to come back later to fight the charge in court. But before they can be released on bond from the jail, ICE detains them. So they never get out of jail. They are not convicted of this charge. Sometimes these charges are insanely ridiculous. I had a client who was accused of something without any evidence and basically of stealing something worth less than $10 and then charged with felony breaking and entering with no evidence. And then the person who's pressed the charges is very open about how they just want to make a point because the person is an immigrant.
So these are bogus charges, but a bogus charge can lead directly to
ICE detention. Yes. And this person has been detained in ICE detention for months as a result of having a completely bogus charge. And this person has an active asylum case and valid papers. So
at what point do they get to see a judge?
That's the $1 million question. So at Alligator Alcatraz, there's no judge assigned to that facility at all. So if you're at Alligator Alcatraz, you're not going to see a judge until you're transferred to another facility. And people have been there up to a month and a half without having any information about their case, without knowing when they're going to see a judge. And some of these folks, like I said, have valid papers, active asylum cases, are, legal residents, and they have not even been able to talk with a lawyer. The news coverage about how they have very little access to legal services is true unless their lawyer is like incredibly aggressive in their conversations with ICE and the facility and really advocating and calling every day and emailing every day and really trying to get a hold of them and leveraging local politicians to have them call. Like, unless you have connections and you're really trying hard, you're not going to get a hold of your client if they're in Alligator Alcatraz. It's not happening.
Well, Alligator Alcatraz is closed now, correct?
No.
It's not.
No. So effectively what happened with Alligator Alcatraz is that the Miccosukee tribe and the Friends of the Everglades leveraged a lawsuit on behalf of NEPA, which is the federal requirement to do an environmental investigation of possible negative side effects for the environment. That lawsuit was granted a halt of all activities in terms of building. It didn't decide upon the immigration activities or the human rights issues. It was just deciding upon the environment. It's still been active. They never halted facility activity completely. I am still connected with people on the ground there, and they've been observing the same levels of activity. There's been ins and outs. People have been coming in buses. People are there. I still have clients that are there. Like, it never closed.
Do we have any idea of how many people are in ICE detention right now?
It's in the hundreds of thousands, I'm pretty sure. But these facilities that are like Alligator Alcatraz that are built specifically for ICE detention are not the only facilities that are holding people.
So someone gets arrested, they get taken off the streets. We see, if you look on social media, you see people being just literally just dragged off the streets. We see them right after court hearings, people getting arrested. It's now happening in jails. I don't think I see videos of that, but obviously it's occurring. What is the, God, I almost want to use the word prognosis for somebody who gets detained? What actually happens to them? How long are they there? And does this end with them being deported? Can it end with them being released? Is there a suspension of habeas corpus? Are there death camps? Let me know.
Yeah. So it really depends on a lot of different things. One, do they have somebody on the outside advocating for them is the hugest thing. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because even if I don't directly know this person, if they know that somebody is watching, they're more likely to follow through on doing what they're supposed to be doing, including deporting people when they've consented to deportation. Um,
Mhm.
the other factor is whether or not they've had a felony charge conviction. So if they have a conviction of a felony, especially an aggravated assault or something of the equivalent, they are being told by ICE and judges that they will never get out. They will never get out. They are not eligible for deportation. They can be held as long as they want, and that's what they're being told. Like so, in these detention facilities, people are given different jumpsuits or different wristbands with different colors on them according to their accused charge and threat level. So, gray is like no charges, no history, no threat level. Blue is usually like a traffic violation or driving without a license. Orange is like a misdemeanor felony and medium threat. And then red is high level threat with usually a felony conviction. But we have been having clients of mine that have just been advocating for themselves and then put from wearing a blue jumpsuit into wearing a red jumpsuit and then put in solitary confinement if they advocate for themselves too much.
Oh my God. So we're color coding our detainees. They're being told they are basically serving a life sentence. Is that right?
So we don't know how true this is, but ICE has told clients of mine that are in red jumpsuits, you are never getting out. You could sign for self-deportation. You could sign your consent to deportation, which often people are asked every day in these facilities to sign for deportation. But you probably won't be deported, or you'll just stay here until we figure out when we want to get to your case. People are getting court dates in 2026, especially if they have a conviction. They're being told that, you'll see the judge maybe next year, maybe not. And that's exactly what ICE is saying. We don't know how true this is. We know that if you have a lawyer and then if you have a social worker or somebody in your family who's advocating for you, you're more likely to actually have access to due process. But if you are not attached to anyone on the outside, it's very easy for people to disappear. I've had clients who have come to me, families who've come to me saying, like, my loved one is not showing up in ICE's system. I've called ICE over and over again. They're not showing up in the tracker. They're telling me he's been deported, but he's calling me from somebody else's phone and telling me he's in this detention facility across the country. Like people in Florida getting told by their loved one on the phone, I'm in Texas or I'm in Nevada or I'm in Arizona, but they're not showing up in the system at all. So there's very little accountability. And then as soon as I email them or contact them, they're like, oh, this person has been deported. I'm like, actually, that's not true. And then they immediately get deported.
So what happens when someone is deported?
That depends on the country.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they're being left in their country of origin in a very rural place, often dangerous places with sometimes they don't even have access to the belongings they had. They don't have access to phones. They are dropped off sort of in a rural bus stop in the middle of nowhere with no access to anything, which is very, very, very dangerous.
Wait, I mean, I've heard about people being dropped off in like Uganda or, all sort of like just random, they might be from Venezuela, but now they're in Uganda.
Yeah.
They're not sent to like a Ugandan prison. They're just dropped off in the countryside.
So I only know I don't have any clients of mine that have been deported to countries that they're not originally from. I don't know what's happening there. But when they're deported to their country of origin, they're usually dropped off in a very rural place in that country, not anywhere where they're from, not any sort of like urban environment. There's not usually any resources available there to meet them, even though these countries are trying to get it together to meet, like Mexico, for example, is trying to get it together so that the consulate is making sure that they have resources when they're deported, when they cross the border. And this would make more sense if they were dropped off at the border, but they're not. They're being flown deep into the countries in very rural areas and then dropped off in like very like the southern tip of Mexico, very far away from any resources that might help.
So how does that happen? They get on an airplane, they fly to like a regional airport, then they bus them off to like sort of a farmland and drop them off?
Yeah.
And those are are those Americans doing that, or are these locals?
It's ICE. ICE is doing that. Yes.
So ICE runs buses in Mexico that drop people off into nowhere.
That's what my clients are telling me.
There's also a class of people who are lost in the system, it seems, just completely, people are use this word frequently, disappeared. When we hear that in the terms of Argentina, they end up in a shallow grave. That's not happening here in the United States, to your knowledge.
It hasn't happened to any of my clients, but I can't say that it's not happening because the people who would be disappeared wouldn't usually have family members that would reach out to me for help, wouldn't be able to call out to me for help, wouldn't be able to contact me at all. Because that's the kind of person that would get lost, is somebody that doesn't necessarily have somebody making sure they're looking for them, right? So a lot of my clients already have family that are trying to find them, that are trying to get a hold of them. They just need a little bit more help or a little bit more bureaucratic access. But the people who would be disappeared easily wouldn't even have access to phones. Some people are based on the stories I've heard, people are put in solitary confinement and never heard of again. And so like the people I'm talking to are the people who have access to the phones, are people who have access to calling their family members, are the people who are in the general population. But at Alligator Alcatraz, I know there are punishment cells. So if somebody acts out in a way that the ICE agents don't like, they're put into a different portion of the facility entirely and not seen again by any of their peers. That's also the case at El Paso Enhanced Hardened Facility, which is a deportation transfer hub in El Paso, Texas. And they have solitary confinement there as well, as far as I understand. The majority of people who I had at Alligator Alcatraz, who were my clients that were transferred out, were transferred to El Paso Enhanced Hardened Facility and then transferred to El Paso Camp East, Montana on the Fort Bliss Army Base. And they have been there since the original big transfer out of Alligator Alcatraz. But some were transferred out of there to Arizona, Louisiana, California, and New Mexico.
It is, this just reminds me of Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil, right? We have people being, we could say disappeared by a bureaucracy, and whatever happens to them, you really don't know. It is incredibly terrifying. And there's no national list of detainees, I'm assuming.
Not that I've found. That would be highly unusual to make public. I'm not even really sure how the Miami Herald had a full list of detainee names that were at Alligator Alcatraz. It'd be interesting to ask them. But I've been trying to contact them about some of the detainees that I've been talking with and their families who were on that list, who they claim were disappeared or went off the grid. A part of that is that I think around 500 of those folks on their list were showing up in the ICE locator as call ICE for details. And instead of listing the detention facility. And this happened to a lot of my clients that were transferred from Alligator Alcatraz to El Paso, specifically when they got transferred finally to Camp East, Montana, which is the newest Alligator Alcatraz. It's tents, just like Alligator Alcatraz. It's in the middle of the desert. It's called a soft-sided facility. And it's supposed to hold up to 5,000 people. It's supposed to be like the biggest detention facility ever in the history of the United States. And it is also the site of a former Japanese internment camp, of course. And I've been trying to raise awareness about this facility because very few people are reporting on it or even know about it. And it's very clear that they were trying to open that much more quietly than Alligator Alcatraz. They originally named it the Lone Star Lockup, and then they just completely stopped coverage on it. Nobody was reporting on it. Nobody was referring to it that way. And it is just very quietly sitting there holding thousands of people without anybody knowing.
And it's in Montana.
No, that's the funny thing. It's in Texas. It's in El Paso, Texas. The name of it is called Camp East Montana because it's on East Montana Avenue in El Paso, Texas. It's right next to the El Paso airport on the Fort Bliss Army base.
So it almost seems like it's sort of an intentional misdirection there to like, so you
Yeah,
don't even know what state it's in. Because when I first heard about it, I was sure it was in Montana because it was right in the name.
it's not in Montana. There are no ICE detention facilities in Montana.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
crazy.
A lot of my clients were confused too. Even my clients who were in the facilities were like, I think I'm in Montana, but they're saying I'm in Texas. I'm confused. Like everybody
How
was.
do your clients get access to phones?
So each unit or pod, they're calling them, is around 60 to 80 people, and they have a set number of tablets. I think it's usually like 2 tablets per pod. So it takes a long while to get access to the tablets. And in order to be able to call out, you have to have a person-specific PIN that is assigned to you by ICE, and it's part of the booking process. At first, a lot of people weren't able to get a hold of their loved ones because the booking process is super delayed. They don't actually even have any ICE agents assigned to this facility because it's so new. And so there was a lot of sort of delay in getting people booked and assigned to the facility and showing up in the system as being at the facility and then getting their PIN to access the tablets. It took, on average, a week or two to even get access to the tablets. But what was really nice is that the detainees who were already there, and people have been in this facility prior to it being like formally expanded to be this big facility. It was a transfer hub before then. But people were there and sharing their funds and their phone to let people call home and let them know, let their loved ones know they were okay.
Are are there any US citizens in these facilities?
Yes. I mean, as far as I understand, my clients have been telling me that they've talked to numerous people who claim that they're US citizens.
So
There are also young people in the facilities. There are people under 18.
so there's a world. This is the world where you can be picked up by a federal authority, even if you're an American, put into a facility and essentially disappeared.
If nobody is looking out for you, yes.
How likely is it to get worse?
That's interesting that you're asking me that question because I don't I'm not good at like the predictive factor of things. I through this whole journey have learned more and more every day about how it's been really bad for a very long time. I mean, this has been the situation on a much smaller scale for a very, very long time, for decades. Um, but this is getting bad and much worse very quickly. I've been told by lawyers that they're struggling to even get people out on bond because ICE is fighting the bonds. So when people are released on immigration bond, it's separate from like a criminal bond. And they're getting approved for bond by the judge, which takes a whole lot of resources, a lot of money, thousands of dollars, time, filings, etc. And then they're being told that they still have to be detained because ICE is appealing the bond. So people are not even getting bond hearings until 2026. If they do, they're very, very infrequently getting the bond granted because the judges are really good at delaying things. So they'll be like, oh, I don't really want to do this because I want to take my lunch, or I don't have jurisdiction because you were transferred from another state, or I don't want to decide on this right now. I'm going to delay you for 150 days.
Wow. Justice delayed is justice denied. At this point in the conversation, Taylor had to go off the record. She told me how she was being followed and how certain individuals who were clearly identifiable with a well-organized right-wing non-government organization were surveilling her house. After some redactions, this is what I can still show you. Tell me about how ICE may have been hacking you or harassing you.
I don't know who was hacking me or harassing me, but I was definitely hacked and harassed. So, yeah, basically before I even left for Alligator Alcatraz, which was like a 2.5 day drive, my phone started glitching. It was a brand new phone. It was like the maps would frequently freak out. Even if I use Google Maps, Apple Maps, like we got lost so many times on the way to Florida because the maps was freaking the heck out. My texts like every time I tried to open a text, the keyboard would like glitch out and like go up and over again. And my phone was overheating constantly to the point where it would have to be like shut down. I am overheating. Like I cannot use my phone kind of thing. And then sometimes it would just randomly not connect to cell phone towers. And then when I was there in person in front of the facility, a lot of really, really weird things were happening. Like I got messages from people that were my loved ones that were asking me where I was, but they knew where I was because they had an access to an AirTag that was in my shoe. And so they knew where I was at all times. And then I started getting messages from people who were helping me that were the exact same message, like trying to ask where I was. And then I had a person that was out there who like brought supplies like bug spray and things like that. And they were a Florida local, and they got followed from Alligator Alcatraz to their home. They lost the tail before they got home, but they were followed. Somebody tried to run them off the road. They were losing air in their tire, and they found there was like somebody had tried to punch a hole in their tire. Like they were really aggressively followed home.
And were you specifically targeted by ICE?
Yeah. So we were followed several times. A few weird things happened to us at gas stations where like somebody tried to mess with our car. I don't know if it was ICE. I really don't. It could have just been like, I'm not sure who was doing it, but at one point my phone was completely unusable. And I didn't know anything about this. So I started reaching out to people on my friend's phone who'd come with me who like knew about cybersecurity, and based on the symptoms that were happening on my phone, they told me that it was likely that I had either some really aggressive spyware or Pegasus. Somebody did do a run of a scan on my phone. So.
And did they confirm that you had Pegasus?
They did.
Pegasus is an Israeli military spyware that has been used to target political activists all across the world. It can be installed simply by sending a text message to a phone number, and it can take control over a phone's operating system without you even clicking on a link or any other action by the user. It's a tool of tyrants and of dictators. And even though it's probably illegal to deploy in America, it's absolutely the kind of surveillance software that a government can use to build a case that would end someone up in the very detention system that I've been talking about with Taylor today.
I assume that I'm being tracked, but I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything anti-American. I'm just trying to help people. And so I try not to worry about it because I really am just trying to help, and I'm not doing anything illegal. And so I'm not worried about being surveilled.
And on this point, I can't say that I agree with Taylor's closing sentiment here. If we're being tracked by a government that plays fast and loose with the laws and throws people into a prison system that has no clear legal recourse, then we should all be wary of any attempt by the government to invade our privacy, because none of us knows how much worse it could get. I want to urge you to follow Taylor on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere else. Her social media handle is Social Worker for the People, and I'll include a link to it down below in the description. I am very, very grateful that people like her exist. And with that, I just have one more thing to say. This is not the kind of reporting that you are going to see on the mainstream media, at least not anymore. With the Trump administration's constant harassment of news outlets, it's getting harder and harder for legitimate journalism to survive. And if you would like to keep in touch with me and maybe even support the work that I do with a premium subscription, please go check me out over at Substack, sgcarney.substack.com, so that if this platform starts censoring me, well, at least I can still be in touch with you directly through email, because that may be where we all have to go, because I don't think any of us trust the tech platforms or Trump or anyone else. For those of you who are already following me over there, thank you. You are part of the resistance, and it means the world to me that we're in it together. From PokeyBear LLC in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates.